All right, welcome back to the show. Today we have a very special guest from across the pond, I believe. Paul Cornell is joining us, and we're going to be talking about his latest work from Ahoy Comics, Con and On, and whatever else happens to come up. So let me bring him in, and let's find out a little bit more about him and his book. How's it going, Paul?
Oh, fine. Thank you. Thanks for having me this evening.
Before we get into talking about the book and stuff, I just kind of so I know where people are coming from or creators are coming from. Do you remember like maybe the first comic book that you read, or maybe the one that kind of grasped your interest?
Oh, very much so. I mean, comics were always in my house, very junior comics like Playland and Pippin in British comic weeklies. But my dad suddenly brought home Avengers Weekly issue 1, which I still have that issue. And it was issue 4 of the Avengers because they'd already been running in another British weekly. But with a bit of scary Ditko Doctor Strange in the back. And it was the most exciting, most grown-up thing my very small self had ever seen. And hence a lifelong love of Marvel comics. And seeing the smaller American versions that seemed way ahead and had familiar characters and some completely unfamiliar ones, I'm like, who was that guy who was important enough to be in the corner box, but wasn't in the comics I was reading? Just that Jaws zoom in moment of whoa, what a big universe, and so that and a lifelong fascination resulted.
And tell us a little bit about your history with comics, because I mean you've written quite a few things, and you've written for Marvel, you've written for DC, and in between.
I've kind of been there and done that. It all started like so many things in my career with Doctor Who. That led me into writing comics for Doctor Who magazine in Britain, and from there the 2000 AD magazine, and then a long gap, and then once my Doctor Who episode had aired, Mark Millar emailed me and said, "I liked your Doctor Who episode. Would you like to write for Marvel Comics?" And I was like, "Well, hey!" So I always say that's a very easy career route that any young comicer can copy.
Yeah. So let's kind of talk about your latest work from Ahoy Comics, Con and On. Kind of give us an idea what it's about and who are the main players.
It's about 30 years in the life of an enormous US comics convention. And we skip ahead 8 or 9 years every issue. And it's got a sprawling cast of fans and professionals and all the people who make up a comics convention. And I just wanted to show each issue is set in a specific year, and the final issue is set in 2022. And I just wanted to show how the industry has changed across that sweep, and picked out characters that let me demonstrate a lot of the changes. And it's full of real stuff. It's packed with anecdotes. It's lots of stuff that's really happened to myself and my friends.
Mm-hmm.
And there's right at the start a couple of childhood friends who both aspire to be comicers, and they go on journeys of vastly different journeys, the trajectories of which keep intertwining and lead to heartbreak. And there's the 3 British comicers, part of the first wave of Brits in the States, as British comicers first went over there. They are a cosmic explorer, a dapper gentleman in a suit, and a wild man. And I think that covers all British comicers. I don't believe these are satires about individuals. I believe that's all of them.
I kind of, when introduced to those characters, I could kind of put different creators into those roles. Was that kind of intentional, or just?
Oh yeah,
just
I think you could name at least 5 for each of them. And they're some of my favorites. And there's also an actor who goes on an odyssey of it's all about success and failure, really, because I've kind of experienced a roller coaster that's gone up and down. I've worked for the big two. I've been Marvel and DC exclusive. I've actually had the strange pleasure of going in and out of the big two on a couple of occasions, and I have gone to the depths and gone to the heights, and it's very easy when you're a writer of stories to assign your own life a dramatic shape.
Mhm.
But actually, real life is a lot more determined by chaos and accident. And so if one is not careful, one assumes that your success or your failure was down to your own actions. In terms of, of moral just desserts, when in actual fact it's down to your own actions in terms of tactics and how nice you were to people, and whether or not you made the most of your opportunities. But it is, however, not a story, and your career may go up and down. And that's sort of what I was trying to say across the whole span of the comic. There are people who very much go up, and there are people who very much go down, and there are people who bounce along. And there's also some heroic fans. I did a couple of interviews early on which assumed that this was a book that was going to laugh at fandom, and it's exactly the opposite. It's a book that laughs at prose. And the fans are generally heroic in this. And yeah, so that's sort of the slice of it. So many places and locations I have been, from those rooftop hotel parties to poolside, where the comickers gather, to those enormous panel halls and the teeny tiny ones with 1 or 2 people, one of whom is asleep. So yeah, that's kind of what it's about. It's my big Robert Altman movie about comic conventions.
I was going to say it kind of has a postmodern type feel to it. I mean, I don't know if I'm using that term correctly, but to me, it feels like it's has that feel to it. So you have a good sized cast of characters. Is there maybe a character that you kind of latched onto, or maybe one that in the beginning you weren't very excited about, and then kind of grew to love, or wanted to see them go a different route?
Well, I've got to say, I like the 2 comics dealers who have the same piece of dialogue in every issue across 30 years, which is, oh, this is my last year for sure. Yeah, mine too. And but until one of them cracks at the end and won't repeat the pattern. But, no, I've found myself really emoting along with it. There's an awful lot of personal emotion in it. I'm actually in it. There was one occasion where there was an anecdote where I thought, well, it's a harmless kind of anecdote. I was the fall guy. I might as well be in the comic and be the fall guy again. And Marika, Cresta, our wonderful artist, drew a quite too handsome version of me, and I said to her, "You can be in it too." And she's put herself in the Women in Comics panel, which is another thing. Yeah, I think it's sort of it's my big statement about the industry, and it's quite one of the things that I think gives it that that sheen you were talking about, is that right at the end, I write a commentary track, as if a historian from the future is watching or reading this comic and giving us a commentary track. And it gives us another layer of irony, basically. She can say, after the comics dealers have said, this is my last year, this was not their last year. And, you know, I always do that last, because then I can comment from on high on everything. And yeah.
So what would, I mean, this type of book that it is, you know, fits right into, you know, the Ahoy Comics's, you know, line of works. What, you know, was it written like pitched specifically to them? Or, you know, do they come to you? Because I know that you've done other stuff for them, and but
well, yes, I've very much enjoyed working for their Edgar Allan Poe anthologies, and recently for Project Cryptid. I was actually planning it as a novel, but then I thought, you know, it would so suit Ahoy, and honestly, it wouldn't suit anybody else, really. They are the ideal company to publish it. And I love that they've got their niche of doing kind of dark comedy comics. Very adult in the best way comedies. Adult like Curb Your Enthusiasm adult. And I also love the fact that they put together a lovely little package. You get a little magazine with an extra serial prose in the back, and poetry and little extra bits. It's you know, they're also very, very ethical and deeply lovely people to work for.
Now you kind of mentioned the artist that you're working with. Tell us a little bit more. How did you, you know, meet her? How did you guys get teamed up, or, you know, how did that happen?
Our wonderful editor Tom Payer suggested her, and I'd just seen her work on Jamie McKelvey's Captain Carter comic, and she'd got the character designs just so quickly, so spot on, and you know, and she's been called upon to recreate everything from a little park where the homeless and the cosplayers hang out together, to the tented line over the big queue for a big convention hall. And, you know, she's done a remarkable job, and I love her acting. I love the characterization she brings to our leads. She had a baby in the middle of this, and in that quite startling way with professionals, she just suddenly said, "So I'm not going to be able to work for the next couple of days. I'm having a baby." Whoa, okay. Couple of days, you say? Okay.
Now, you know, we've talked about how you've written for the different publishers, and so I really enjoyed your Saucer County. I mean, when I was after Transmetropolitan kind of wrapped up, and, you know, I was looking for that next like Vertigo type, and Saucer County was one of the ones I kind of drifted towards. But how is it? Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
We're nearly there. We are literally on the verge of printing the completed Saucer Country for Zoop. The designer has finished the volume. We are, I think, in the next 2 days, the printing presses will start. And I've written, and Ryan has drawn, a finale issue that completes the story, answers all the questions, and ties everything up in the knot I was always planning to tie. And I am so delighted and satisfied. It's an enormous monster of a book. It's got the Strange Adventures prologue, all of Saucer Country, all of Saucer State, the sequel, and the finale in it, and an introduction by me at the front. And for those people who've bought every issue and just want the ending, we're also releasing the ending as a separate comic. And I I couldn't be happier. Zoop have been amazing to work for. And Ryan, oh my God, I don't want to go into the details because this is private, but he went through hell during the making of this, and he still came out with some of his best ever art. And no, I mean, seriously, he was awful stuff was happening to him, and I was very moved that he still did his absolute best job for us. And that's a great artist, and you know, he is, I think, the person who can. Maybe it's a tie between him and Sally Cantorino on I Walk with Monsters, but I think those two get my acting really so well. They do the interpretation of what I want the characters to be looking and saying just so precisely. So I'm excited by that. Our backers should get that. I'm thinking by the end of the year. I don't think that's out of the question. No?
Very nice. So I mean, one of my favorite DC things that you wrote was the Demon Knights, and that was such one of my favorite of the New 52, you know, line. But how is it difficult to go from like writing the comic book fantasy stuff to writing something which is more real world, like on and on?
Well, I've always done everything all at once. I mean, I think my career would be more successful if people knew what to expect from me. But I've always been doing several different projects in different media on different themes at the same time, and now it's just sort of second nature to me. I think I'd get bored if I had to. I mean, if I was, say, a writer of epic fantasy, I would feel so constrained. I'd be like, oh, could I just get a pseudonym and go off and write some, you know, slice of life or SF or something, you know?
So, who are your writing influences? You know, who kind of, you know, inspires you to write the way that you do and transfer, you know, things from, you know, your mind onto the page for the artist to then interpret?
Well, I mean, lots of different media here, but Stanley, his storytelling from childhood, the way his way with story led the reader in and kept them. I think he's vastly undervalued. And it was my great privilege to work for him, and I'm delighted to have got to meet him and know him a bit. In other areas, Terrence Dicks, Ursula Le Guin, Harlan Ellison, a lot of British New Wave, SF, Christopher Priest, more recently Lauren Bucas. Firecracker prose, and in comics, lots of 70s Bronze Age. Steve Gerber, by a mile. David Anthony Kraft, Engelhart, Roger Stern, undervalued, and TV, Stephen Moffat. I mean, he's a friend, but he was an influence before he was a friend. There's a Murray Smith, who was a British TV crime writer, who again I got very briefly to meet and work for, but just before he died. So yeah, you know, I'm the sort of person who has always been interested in who's writing the book or the comic, or whose name appears as the writer in the titles of the TV show, and I've just been accumulating these influences all my life, and hasn't stopped. You know, I'll suddenly find myself I'm down a rabbit hole with an ancient British radio SF series called Journey into Space, written by another hero of mine, Charles Chilton. Who nobody who watches your show will have heard of Charles Chilton.
So, I mean, you've worked on, quite a few, different characters, across publishers. Is there one character that maybe, you haven't, had the chance to work on that you would just jump at the chance to do so?
Oh goodness, yes. I want to bring John Steed and Emma Peel to comics. I have a plan. I have a format. I know what I want to do. I've said this to so many comics publishers over the years. One day I will do it. But in terms of established characters from comics, there's a bunch of 2000 AD folk I wouldn't mind doing. There's I would love to go back to Superman, but I think I made kind of my definitive statement about him just at the end. But I didn't get to use Superman for a very long time at all, because on my Action Comics run, it was mostly Lex Luthor, and I love Lex. But I said what I wanted to say about Lex. I miss Pete Wisdom. From Captain Britain and MI13. I'd like to get back to him. But characters I've never written for. A sort of classic Avengers lineup I wouldn't mind. Or there's all sorts of weirdness, basically, I think I could do something with the Man-Thing. This has become. I talk about the Man-Thing a lot, and this has become a subject of some mockery amongst my peers. But it's one of the most brilliant comics ever written, and it's quite ridiculous that a title called Giant Size Man-Thing would also be one of the best Marvel comics. Basically anything Gerber oriented, I would be up for. Yeah, there's the big two are still an amazing box of chocolates that I would love to write.
So, kind of going back to the whole con and on. Now, is there any con stories that maybe you personally had that you were like, I could use this, but I don't want to, to protect the innocent, or they're too outrageous?
They're all in here. I haven't protected the innocent at all. No, I've protected the innocent. I haven't protected the guilty. But no, I mean, I haven't named names, but on the other hand, a lot of stuff in here is true.
Okay. So you're leaving it up to the reader to figure out what's true, and if they can figure out who is being.
I don't think they're able to figure out who.
Yeah.
Also, it's not really very important. It's kind of the least important thing. It's the fact that there's a culture and that extraordinary Wild West aspect to comics, which has never gone away and is both terrifying and sometimes great. The idea that honestly anything can happen in the next half hour, and there's no protection. We have a charity instead of a pension scheme. It's still a rough business, and I'm well pleased that I'm in other media too. And I fear for anybody who's just in comics, always, because so few of us get out alive. It's a very, very damaging industry compared to other entertainment industries, even.
So, is there, as we kind of start to wrap up, is there anything else about the series that maybe you wanted to mention, or that maybe we didn't cover? Or I mean, I assume that this is probably just a 6-issue series, correct? There's not going to be a
5.
5. Okay.
Yeah, and no, we are a novel. We have a solid ending at the end of 5.
Okay.
And I wanted to mention the Caruncle Awards. Julius Caruncle, the beloved ancient CEO, at the very start of our tale of one of the bigger fictional comics companies, turns out to be historically guilty of some awful things. And we asked Marika to design a trophy for the awards named after him, the Caruncle Awards. And wonderfully, she designed a halo on a plinth.
So, if you want to kind of give a final, picture of the series of, what else you're working or have out, or where people can find your work, or find you on social media.
Yeah. Well, I'm on Blue Sky and Instagram are my only socials. You can find me at paulcornell.com, where you'll find my link tree, where you can see everything about me. I also am half of Hammer House of Podcast. We're watching the Hammer horror movies in release order. I've got, as has just been revealed, something coming out from the Vault next year, which I cannot say anything more about. There are 3 or 4 other comics things in process of happening. I'm doing a sequel to my Witches of Lichford books on my Substack, which is called Night of the Gnomes, and we're nearly finished that, and we are about to start another one, but subscribers can read all the previous episodes. And basically, if you go searching for me, you'll find me.
All right. Well, I want to, thank you for taking the time to chat with us here, and maybe next time, or whenever your other stuff comes out, we can have you back and we can chat about those.
Oh, thank you so much. I mean, Con it's a labor of love for me. It's actually talking about the situation I've been in and the culture I've been in for the first time, and I hope it resonates. It seems to. And anyway, thank you so much for letting me talk about it.
Oh, not a problem. And like I said, thank you for coming on. And for those of you watching, you can follow me on Blue Sky. You can follow me on X for now, and then you can also find me. I contribute to comicwatch.com, and I'll do up an article about this interview, and I'll throw it up on Comic Watch along with this interview. And so thank you very much, and I'll let you get back to work. I know it's 5+ hours over there or so.
Well, I'll be going to bed shortly. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care.